Public Works Committee, DPW, Parks, Recreation, and Railroad Committee to order. First thing we need is a motion to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. Motion by Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor Loeb. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, before we get into the meeting, I want to give the public or anybody here an opportunity to speak before we get into our meeting, because I know there's people that have been sitting here patiently.
Want me to speak now?
If you'd like to, I'm offering you the opportunity because I know your time is valuable. So.
Sure. I'm not sure what you'll do with the railroad today, but I just wanted to say from the perspective of the Adirondack Mountain Club, and I'm the Executive Director and Councilor Neil Woodworth, is that we all remember the serious issue of rail car storage on the Tawas line. And that was something that drew opposition from Essex County and from Warren County all the way up to the governor and many individuals and groups. I think the thing that can be avoided in the future, whatever you decide to do with the railroad, is that you can put in restrictive covenants or language that the town attorney can draft or the county attorney can draft that will prevent rail car storage. I took a look at On the Tracks, who may be the suitor that is coming to you to buy the railroad or lease the railroad, and they have a very active rail car storage division. And it's a big business for them, and they specifically mention storage of the DOT 111 tank cars that we were so concerned about the last time around. And when you look at the map of the United States where On the Tracks has its rail car storage, the one place in the country where they really don't have the storage capability is up in this area, up in the Northeast. So you can prevent that with appropriate language from the county attorney and make it binding on this railroad and any railroad in the future. They can do everything else, but you take that storage of rail cars off the table. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else? Okay, we'll move into our agenda, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Hagehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on the agenda is on page 2, is a request to enter into an agreement with the Thurman Connection for the use of the railroad right-of-way for the Snowmobile Club. They, at a time, I want to say, I don't remember or recall how many years ago it was, but they did use the railroad tracks for the Snowmobile Club. They maintained the tracks in the areas that they used. They put mats down in certain areas. They put up some plywood along the bridges where they crossed. And then since Iowa Pacific came in, or Saratoga North came in, they no longer wanted to allow the Snowmobile Club on there because they had an active line. I believe in the winter months before, when Upper Hudson was here, it wasn't that active. But since Saratoga North Creek came in, it became an active line, and they stopped all snowmobile use. So Thurman Connection came back to us and asked if they could use the railroad right away again for their Snowmobile Club.
Motion? Supervisor Loeb, do we have a second? Supervisor Wild, any discussion? Supervisor Dickinson?
If we do something with the track, are we going to have an exclusion to get out of this contract?
I would believe we'd have to put some type of clause in that contract, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, what about the 1,000 acres possibility of, the track is open, they get a line that wants to come in this winter?
We have no proposal in writing from Stony Creek Ranch at this point. Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along the same vein, do we have to make sure that this track is not open? So do we have to pin crossings up or do certain things to make sure that there is no traffic on this line?
There should be, once Iowa Pacific takes their cars out of here, there should be no And it reverts back basically to us as a county. We can issue this as a, I guess I want to say a dead line or a no service line that the track is not running. It's not an active track.
So would that be part of this contract then?
We would do that on our own. Warren County would. As soon as Iowa Pacific had their material out of here, we could say that it's no longer an active track.
Thank you.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. Along that line, if Saratoga North Creek has all of its equipment out of there and it's a dead line, I would like to see us open this to the public, not just to snowmobilers, but to people who maybe want to go cross-country skiing in the winter or hike on it in the spring. If there is no railroad operation and it's dead come spring, come winter, why can we not let people use this? It's a public asset still. We haven't sold it off yet, and there are people who want to use it. Why are we limiting it only to snowmobiles?
Insurance purposes? For one thing, you have a contract with them. And secondly, if you're going to let everybody willy-nilly use it, you run the risk of them damaging it or damaging property, getting hurt on the tracks, doing something stupid. Like going across the trestle on the rear wheel of a motorcycle.
Supervisor Bramer?
Well, I mean,
Do that.
snowmobilers
Just one.
can damage the track way more easily than someone walking around or...
But we have a contract with them.
Okay, but there's a state statute that says people recreating on land for free cannot, you can't hold the landowner liable for anything that happens to them. So that argument, I don't think holds water. We don't need a contract with the public to let them use their own resource.
Not a public resource, it's the county's.
Oh, we're not the public? The county isn't the public?
Well, it's not open to the public. There's a lot of county
That's what I'm
property.
asking. Why don't we
There's a lot
open it
of
to
county
the public?
property that the public can't go on.
Supervisor Garrity?
My only concern with that, Claudia, is about the open areas. Who's going to be responsible if you get somebody who doesn't know the area and they want to go cross-country skiing in the rails or something, and then all of a sudden there's a hole there or something. You're saying liability on behalf of the county because, they do cross certain bridges and things that can be filled in. There's no liability for us if somebody gets on the tracks and doesn't know the area. They get a spill.
I'm going to defer to the county attorney on that one.
I would have to look into that. I've never heard of that law.
There is a case, Ionati versus Conrail, that did apply the protection of 913, which Claudia's referring to the major rail yard in Amsterdam. Ionati with an I-N. Court of Appeals decision.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Adding to what Supervisor Dickinson said as far as our including a clause which allows us, if our circumstances change as far as use of the railroad, we can change our obligation to this contract. I also would think it would be appropriate to just have this as a 1 year, year to year. We're talking about snowmobiles, so season to season. So this is for this winter season.
I was going to add that was always done in the past. It was only on a year-to-year basis that they contracted with these snowmobile clubs.
Thank you, Chairman.
Supervisor Stroud?
Going along with what Claudia said, she's right. For recreational trails, New York State has imposed severe restrictions on anybody being able to sue recreational users for recreational trails. But I think the county attorney has to look into, do we have to declare it a recreational trail before we get those kind of protections?
Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One step further, the public unfortunately doesn't pay as much attention to what happens here at the county. And my worry would be that we open it up this year and then we get a commercial operation going and not everybody realizes it's now an active rail system and we have people recreating on an active line. Just food for thought.
Supervisor Leggett?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as Thurman Connection, it's
4 miles of track. I take it it's all within the town of Thurman that they're looking for, so that's a specific use. The rest of the line, if it's not used during the winter time, I don't know why anybody just could not stop at Riverside Station and hop on the tracks with their skis and ski off to North Creek. It's not as if we need to declare it. It's, you know, it's not like we're going to be patrolling it. People, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's an issue.
Supervisor Hogan?
I think building off of what Supervisor Leggett just said and Supervisor Stroud is more to the fact that the recent experience was that as soon as people thought these tracks were being used, they were on it. What, 24 people when they were trying to run a train? They're going to use it. So I think what we need to do is get ahead of that and look at what we need to do to make sure we're covered, because they're going to use it. Whether there's snowmobiles in Thurman or...
Okay. Did you have something?
I just
before
wanted
call
to
it?
add, and I'm not, by no means am I a lawyer, but Claudia, going back to that statute or that law, I think Supervisor Stroud is right, because we ran into this situation probably 4 or 5 years back when we were putting snowmobiles in different areas around people's lands in Thurman, was that it has to be declared as some type of recreational use. I remember there was a question on those trails that were put in back then, and they were declared, and on a map, part of the Snowmobile Club as snowmobile trails.
Okay, are we ready for the...
I just say, let's please look at that and see what we can do as a county to protect ourselves going forward. Because people are on it. They are already on it.
And right now it's trespassing. It's an open line, active line.
It won't be active. I mean, I get Supervisor Wild's point too. If we do have somebody and they become an operator and active right away, we shouldn't be encouraging the public to use it and then turn around and have to say, oh, wait a second, guys, there's now active train activity. I don't want anyone to get hurt. I obviously don't want anyone to get hurt.
Supervisor Hogan? I think it is posted for...
It is posted.
A lot of post signs.
I would just offer, I've got some unposted trails in the town of Horkin going into Farrell Wilderness. They're beautiful. You're totally invited to come up there. Welcome. If everybody's ready, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next item on the agenda on page 3 is to authorize a use agreement with Revolution Rail. We had brought this similar to this last month for them to use the ticket office building or the ticket building. They would also like to use the office building up there, and it would be at the same cost that we had laid out before, which is $750 a month. So this is authorize a lease agreement with them to use that building.
Moved by Supervisor Loeb, seconded by Supervisor Dickinson. Discussion?
I have a quick question. What is he doing there?
I think the ticket area that they're using for selling their shirts and tickets and such, the office, I think they're just going to use as as an office for some of their staff.
Thank you.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On our way back from visiting Quahog last night, we drove through North Creek, and rainy night, 7 o'clock. There was a crowd actually at the station, probably 20 people. And just from the body language, it looked like they were enjoying themselves. Apparently that was for the Revolution Rail. So that's an ongoing and profitable business to the community of North Creek. It's like a good idea.
Okay. I need to call the question. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The next item on the agenda is for the committee to ratify the actions of the chairman of the board to sign for a new contract before the September board meeting. Pat Tadish is here from the planning office, and I think I'm going to let her get into this, and then I can add in. All yours, Pat.
All right, thank you. Those of you may know that the planning department continues to request funds for various county projects under the Community Development Block Grant Program managed by the New York State Housing Trust Fund Corporation. And we've had had good fortune for a number of years. Recently, we did an application for, the town of Chester for the Pottersville Water District. Weren't so fortunate on that as yet, but moving forward with that. But today, Kevin Hayes brings before you a request to ratify a resolution for a company to undertake a directional boring of high-density polyethylene pipe along Schroon River Road that would connect the Warrensburg sewer system with the countryside adult home. So we've had problems, let's say, since we began this project with a number of things, starting with the ability to get the work done within the confines of Memorial Day to Labor Day. We had issues with Delaware Tribe of Indians who kind of belabored the project. The town of Warrensburg, we assisted the town of Warrensburg. We did a phase 1 archaeological study on that stretch. So we're pretty much cleared from, as far as the Historic Preservation Act is related to the Indians, from the Warrensburg connection to the countryside adult home. So we're on our second extension with the agency. It's, I think, very imperative that we move on this so that we can get this done by certainly before the December 18th date, which is kind of our last drop dead date with the agency. So I would ask your consideration of that. Before you do that, I just a shout out to the town of Warrensburg in their efforts to, be kind of a major lead agency in this project and providing engineering services as need be. And now with the involvement of Kevin Hayes as a new project partner with Steve Johnson, we're hopeful that we're going to get this, we're going to complete the project as was designed. So that's my thoughts on it today.
A little bit more to add is Pat, this project has been going on for about 4 years. It did run into some difficulties along the way. Pat and the planning group has taken care of just basically fixing those issues that they had. But as she said, we are up against it. We wanted to get this contract signed as soon as possible and get this company in here to start doing that directional boring. I asked them already what they could commit for a date. They said September 10th would be the earliest they could get in here. That would, of course, be before the board meeting, so we'd have to have the contract signed by then. They have, and Pat, you can probably, I don't recall the length of pipe that has to be put in. Originally, they were thinking about excavating this pipe down Horicon Avenue for whatever length it may be, and it was going to be a significant amount of time, a mile worth of road. So now they're going to do directional boring. So basically what that'll be is that these contractors will bore from manhole to manhole, which the manholes haven't been put in yet, and then pull back the pipe that the town of Warrensburg is welding together. And she said it's a plastic pipe. They use a heat fusion machine to weld this pipe together. So it'll go much quicker. We made the suggestion to Pat and Wayne Lamott a while back that as opposed to trying to do this digging that they would never have finished at the end of this year, it was easier probably to go to this directional bore route. I think, and Pat can correct me if I'm wrong, there's a capital or community development project that has grant funding in it of 300 and something thousand, and then there's another capital project that also has another $300,000 to cover the cost of this work being completed.
I'll move that.
Okay, do we have a second? Supervisor Loeb, any discussion?
Two questions. How much of the grant will apply to this? And the second part of that, are we paying a daily rate and not to exceed the $51,000, or is it just?
I'm meeting the contractor, and I spoke with them yesterday. They haven't seen or actually walked. They put a bid in. They got the lower bid. They haven't done a full walk of the project to see how long it's going to take them. We had assumed, and Steve Johnson, as Pat had referred to in my office, came from Cutting Edge Group, and his work at Cutting Edge Group was directional boring. He had assumed it would be no more than 10 days for them to do this work. So he thinks it can be done in those 10 days. So we are paying a daily rate, and we're hoping that it's done in 10 days.
Okay, we ready for the question? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kevin, do you want to do an update on the railroad?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going to do a railroad status update, and Superintendent Hajos is going to update us on the progress of the exit of Iowa Pacific.
So as I've said all along, or every meeting I come into, saying that I've spoke with the gentleman on the ground, Jeff Hagan, who is, I guess, a sub to Iowa Pacific, to remove the engines, cars, materials out of North Creek. Every time I talk to him, he continually tells me that they're moving this, that, the other thing. I've had my Parks and Rec Director, Tim Benway, go up there. He said some things have moved out. He went and did an inventory, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, I talked to you, Ryan, that I think one more coach car is gone. Everything was lined up, and literally all the cars were lined up and attached to be pulled out between yesterday and today. And last night they had a problem with the engine that's pulling everything out, and they had to go back out to Syracuse and get more material or more equipment or parts or whatever to get this train out of here, so things still sit idle. Andrea informed me this morning that that engine that has stopped for them is sitting right in front of our farmer's market. So Andrea, I did just send a text to Jeff on 3 different phones that said the engine needs to be moved. I don't care if it starts and stops, but try to move it 100 feet down the rail. I believe Andrea has some pictures to show all of you. There's still a lot of pallets of material sitting around there that they haven't worked on yet. They're really been concentrating on getting the coach cars and the engines out of there, and I think we can just pass those around. I didn't see these pictures until this morning. One of the pictures shows a debris pile, looks like C&D waste. I can move that material out of there. It looks to me to be garbage, but again, there's a cost associated with me moving that material out of there. There's another picture showing, Andrew, is the picture in there of the open pit? You don't have to, I can talk to it. There's an open pit up there that they work on rail cars. It's probably the better part of 10 feet in the ground, 8 to 10 feet in the ground. It's filled up with water. Now that no cars are over that pit anymore, they're really not doing any work. Andrea's asked me if there's something we could do. I told her that I would call the shop, and I'll put steel plates over that so that's covered up, so no one falls into those pits. A couple of the other pictures are just showing the rest of the material that's up there that they haven't taken out yet. The indication that I've been given right now from this Jeff Hagan is that they are out of money, and their payment from Iowa Pacific is any of this material that's laying around the tracks up there. I think he's even getting an engine out of the deal as well. Again, everything's still there. I haven't gotten a response back from him today of whether or not he's getting up there to move the engine, number one, and number two, if they're going to have that engine with the oil problem fixed today.
Supervisor McGowan.
If that's the case, is that little payment is the stuff, what legalities do we have where we, not that I want to spend our money to move it, but I mean, geez, crow. What can we do to get it moved and go after either or both companies, for some form of reimbursement?
What would be the process of moving the debris pile?
It'd be pretty simple. I have a loader up in North Creek, and I don't know how many containers that I have, or extra containers, but I can bring a C&D container up there, whether it be a 30 or 40 yard. I have to throw that material away somewhere, which is, if it's Casella waste or Hiram Hollow or whatever, there's a cost associated with that. I don't know what that cost is yet. I just saw the picture. I'd have to determine how much material is up there that I could fit into a...
Quite a bit. A 40-yard dumpster, it's not going to do it.
No, I think it'll take a couple. And there's a cost that we have on bid or on a term agreement with Casella, or those to remove that material, so I just have to find out approximately how much that material would be.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mayor, very much, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the photographs, I certainly wouldn't want that. Deplorable conditions in my community. I would suggest to this board to have Kevin cost it out we find the money, clean it up, and then if there's any civil action or any other action that we feel is necessary to take, we then encourage the county attorney to address that. I wouldn't want that. I don't think any of the supervisors here would want those, that deplorable condition sitting in their community. So if it would be, if Kevin could come back to us, give us a cost, I'm certainly sure we can find some money somewhere in a contingency account to clean this up.
I agree.
DPW or whether it's out of the general fund.
The other thing,
Trash. Just confirm it's actually garbage.
I will. Well, I believe the one pile is debris. I believe most of the other piles or pallets you see is probably the material that he's taking, but I believe this is definitely a debris pile.
Now, where'd that debris pile come from?
Probably emptying out a lot of the buildings that they had material in.
Mary, I got a question. I'm wondering, what if we went and we picked up all these pallets, put them on our building and locked them, and owned it until Iowa Pacific responds?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
A lot of it's not on.
So there's,
It's not equipment? Is it junk or is it equipment?
It's all junk to you.
there's a lot of considerations that go into that question. So I don't know, I mean, I can answer them if you want me to, or I don't know if you want to wait for executive session where we
We
can...
can wait till executive session. Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we kind of expedite this? Kevin, do you have a not-to-exceed number, you think, to remove some of this trash, and maybe we just make an authorization to let him do that?
I do. I mean, if I don't exceed a certain amount of money, I don't necessarily, Jack, have to bring it back to a committee meeting to get approval. I can just, as long as Mary's okay with me going up and removing any stuff that we consider C&D waste, absolutely, I'll take care of it.
And the other stuff, I mean, instead of putting it in the garage, do we have a caged area that's off the site that...
I don't there. I do, I have an area in DPW, but it's not a locked gate that somebody could get in.
Supervisor Hogan?
I was just wondering, I know this committee requested a work plan. I'm kind of backing the conversation up a little bit, but whatever happened to that request?
I'll defer to Ryan and Mary on that one.
Ben Dwyer, we spoke all week last week. He was in touch with the lawyer for Iowa Pacific all week, asked every day, and never got a response.
What's our legal recourse?
You want to talk about that now?
I think
or-
we're going to talk about that in executive.
Stop it.
Up to you.
What's the
I
pleasure of the
just know
committee?
rental.
Well, let's settle this one question first. What's the pleasure of the committee as far as talking about our legal strategy? Do you want to talk? You want Mary to talk about it now, in open session?
Okay with that. I'm willing to listen to Mary's opinion, but I think the debate should be any kind of discussion into executive session.
Okay, show of hands to wait for the executive session. Show of hands to do it in open session. Yeah, Don, hey, you put us over the edge.
Go ahead.
Okay, remind me of the question.
To discuss our legal
For the
answers
timeline?
on, yes, and ramifications.
If we move their stuff and lock it up.
Okay, so if we move their stuff and lock it up, at that point, basically, we're making it impossible for them to come clean up their stuff. So, I mean, I don't know what the legal ramification is. I have a feeling we'd go in front of a court and they would say, this wasn't in good faith, and how did you expect them to come and move their stuff when you locked it up and they couldn't get to it? I mean, that's just my feeling would happen. We could certainly do it and see what the outcome was. In terms of asking for a timeline, we have no legal ramification for that. I mean, at this point, we either file a lawsuit against them, file a complaint, and seek injunctive relief, or we don't. They don't have to give us a timeline to move their stuff out of there.
So we would essentially follow the course that we follow with Kelly.
Yes.
Supervisor McGowan?
Kevin, what is, like, the stuff that's not on the pallets and that besides the C and D? I mean,
There's tons of stuff up there. There's seats, there's wheel locks, there's parts. I mean, it's just, it's...
I mean, a lot of
and
metal?
I'm no different
Is
than
it like
Andrew.
metal or that we can, you know, scrap out?
We can.
Well, so if we can get some sort of payment for that, then they have damages against us, because we've gone and taken an asset of theirs and turned it into a county asset, so we...
Well, and I understand that, and like I said, but if we get it and we contain it, like I know in people that have left their apartments, we have to, take their stuff and, secure it for 30 days, you know, and try to come to a form of agreement, you know, before, and then after 30 days, if they don't, then we can get rid of it.
Supervisor Bramer?
I don't know the landlord-tenant law, but that seems to be an option that we can pick up the trash and put their stuff somewhere, and eventually it's deemed abandoned. We don't have to hold their stuff for indefinitely.
So is that something we can look into? I mean, like I said, I'm just comparing it to a landlord thing, but, you know, stuff is stuff to me, but enough's enough.
Supervisor Thomas?
Didn't we already give them a timeline, 30 days, and 30 days is expired? There's a timeline right there, it's expired. As far as I'm concerned, it belongs to us.
Supervisor Garrity?
I will donate the services of myself and Mr. Molino. We had success on that aviation loan probably 5 years ago, getting something moved by the afternoon. We could probably go up there and take care of it for you.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree completely with Supervisor Diamond's comments and approach that we should not wait and sit by passively, even though our discussions with the lawyers may not seem passive. Basically, it's because that way we can just not answer calls, go on and on, 6 months, a year, time goes on. I think we should get this cleaned up so that Supervisor Hogan's community is back to where she wants it to be.
I don't mind moving. I just wanted, Mary, is there any liability if I damage anything that I move?
Yes.
The other suggestion I might have is maybe not lock it up, but Andrew, I believe there's probably enough places up there that we could put it off to the side, neaten it all up in one location and leave it, if you would be acceptable to that.
Only if there is a hard and fast deadline for that going away. I mean, not this continuous, okay, you know, I mean, I think we're well beyond the point of good faith when it comes to, yeah, it's going to get out of there.
So I think we need to do that and also follow with the same thing we're doing with the other cars up there that are privately owned, Mr. Kelly's. Get the court decision. Supervisor McGowan?
We sent out a letter to them stating that, you know, time is up, we gave you 30 days, we're going to be moving it, and please be advised if there's any damage, we will not be able to be accountable, we will not be held accountable for.
Sure, I'll write that letter.
You tell them, period.
Supervisor Hyde?
Are there any boxcars up there that are empty?
Oh, good idea.
I'm sure there are.
You need a diner in your town?
Dump it all in the boxcars, and then you can't see it. If there's enough boxcars, dump it all in there. And then you don't have to move it or lock it up.
I don't have to lock them. I'll just close the door and tell them that's where all their stuff is all in the cars.
Wouldn't that work?
My concern is, as I said to Mary, is if our guys, not that they will, but if any of that gets damaged, do they have any recourse back on us? And I'm looking at Mary, she's saying yes, they do.
Just last Saturday.
The only other thing that I can say about this C&D waste removal, I don't know what's in that pile. I mean, I have a picture of it. You know, it's wood, it's scrap. Is there any asbestos in there? Is there any lead-based paint in there? That'll be a different concern of me removing that material, Jack, off-site, because if it's got any of that in it, I just can't throw it away. It's not considered C&D.
Get that looked at.
I'm going to go up today. I think they just emptied like the engine house out. So if I could summarize the direction to the county attorney, it's to write a letter informing them that we'll be moving this stuff, and also to begin legal action, seek injunctive relief, potentially trespass damages against Iowa Pacific. Correct?
Can you also state in there that any possible damage to me is stuff we will not be accounted for since you have bypassed your line, something like that?
I think we could put that in the letter.
Certainly put it in.
I mean, at least it's something written, it's in there, and
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you. We've never gotten any traction with Iowa Pacific for the last few months. Would it be better off to their agents that are actually doing the work to send this letter to? Because they've told us that that's basically their payment, their material.
and the letter out to both of them.
And maybe give them a week.
Supervisor Hogan?
That loophole is exactly one of my concerns, is if we're telling Iowa Pacific to get rid of their stuff, and it's been given to their agent, then we're not communicating with their own party.
Right, go to their agent.
I have a question.
Supervisor McGowan?
Send a letter out to both, so both company knows what's going on.
That's a great idea.
I'll just follow up. I can call DEC to go in there, but DEC is not going to do lab tests on any of that material. We have a consultant on a term agreement that can go up there and do that work for us. But again, there's another added cost for me to have that material tested.
Well, we want it out of there. Supervisor Loeb?
Thank you, Chairman. If you have to go up there, you're going to have it tested. If Jeff does it, he's just going to bring up a dumpster and dump it. I guess that's the way it is. But I think we should move forward. Regardless of the letter, we should move forward.
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
Legally and...
So all of this stuff, and the cars and the property, is it now Jeff Hagan's, or is it still Saratoga North Creek?
Saratoga North Creek still has all the cars up there except for one engine. And that engine, I think, is already down in Saratoga County.
But if that's their payment, is that now their property? I guess is my question.
Would assume yes. So we send a letter to both their agent and Iowa Pacific.
Never send a letter to Jeff Hagan, though, telling him he had to have the property out there by a certain time.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to add to that? Okay, Ryan, did you want to do an update on...
Sure. On the RFP process. So we decided that we would do one RFP. We would have an option to sell, an option to buy, and an option to operate. Respondents could go with either one, or they could offer a proposal for both. And the reason for combining it all into one is there's a lot of information that would be repetitive. Just the content that we discussed, I discussed this all with the purchasing officer, Julie Butler, who's working with me to put all of this together. The content for both of these RFPs, if you will, for both buying and for operating, we would want them to speak to their intentions with a freight operation. We would want them to speak to their intentions as to a tourist train, and also their intentions as to how they would engage local businesses along the corridor, recreational uses, things like Revolution Rail. We would want that all, part of their response. In addition to those things, for the sale, we would also ask that they address their openness to reversion. When they're all done using the track, what terms they would allow the county to take the property back. And we would also want them to discuss deed restrictions so that we could, as part of the sale, prevent a new owner from storing rail cars in certain areas that we could designate
in the sale agreement. Those are the main points in the content. We're pulling a lot of language together from a lot of places to get this going. You should also know that Corinth, their track would be part of the operating, but not part of the sale at this point. They asked if they could be included in the operating side only, so we are moving forward to do that with them. At Julie Butler's request to keep the process organized, we discussed with the chairman about doing a phase one that would essentially qualify bidders. We're going to start with a very, very long list of potential, companies that we reach out to, and anybody who's interested would reply to the phase one and provide certain information, safety record, etc., that would allow us to qualify them. And then we would move forward with that list. And it's a similar approach to, I believe, the way we did the FBO. I wasn't here when that process occurred, but I believe that we did a phase one on the FBO. We have gotten a property update from DPW as to descriptions of all of the county's property that needs to be included in this RFP. We're still waiting on an update for the Corinth property. I'll be working with Supervisor Lucia to make sure that we have that in hand. And the other piece that we're working on is valuation. For the sale portion of the RFP, we've discussed the idea of having a minimum bid. There's really three ways to approach that. One, you could look at the railroad as something that is a drain on the county's operating budget, and therefore, a buyer could argue that it's worthless to the county. You could look at the intrinsic value of the property, the land, the railroad ties, the buildings, or you could look at it from the perspective of somebody's ability to make money off of it. I've been talking with a brokerage firm out in Chicago that I'm familiar with, just to get their thoughts and their advice on how we would do that, pro bono basis, not to have any costs associated with that. So they're taking a look at that for me and talking amongst their colleagues in the industry to see if there are any best practices out there. In the meantime, in terms of us getting a handle on the intrinsic value, we do have insurance valuations of our property for replacement value. We have market value and assessed value on the tax rolls. We put all of that information together. We think that it would be advisable to have an appraisal done. DPW is looking into that. We have some recommendations from our railroad attorney as to companies that could do that kind of work. We would obviously cost that out before we commit to that. But that's probably, if we want to do a minimum bid based on intrinsic value, that's probably the best way to do it. Replacement values for insurance can sometimes be high, and the information off of the tax rolls may or may not be any good. So we're moving forward in that direction, and Julie and I will continue to work on that, and we'll update you as we make progress.
Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this process, as I see it, the only commercial value to that line right now is to move the freight, the tailings, out up to Hawes. Passenger service doesn't look like it's probably a practical business. Tourist train, except tourist value, except for the local areas or any of the towns, doesn't seem to like could exist. And this is based on our experience and what all the suitors are saying, that stuff doesn't work. But freight does. The only problem is that the only freight that we have available will be the tailings. I would like to put a time limit on, not giving them an open, take however many decades you want to move those tailings. If there's a market for those tailings, we're an ongoing country, a lot of things going on in this country. If there's a market for those tailings, that market should pop up real fast, if not already. give them 4 years to do it.
A timeline would also, that would get to whether we would sell or whether we would continue to own the line. The rapidity with which they could move the tailings out of there has a lot to do with investments to be made in the track. The track would require some investment to upgrade the class, to get the trains to move faster, to get the material out of the mines faster. So that does ultimately get to the question of whether the board would want to sell the line or would want to continue to own the line.
Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the county advances into a position where they want to sell the property, is an environmental assessment of the tracks going to be required as part of the sale?
A seeker?
I raise that question because I'd say about 18 years ago, the city had some railroad property abandoned, and we chose to go in the direction and sell the property, which we did. The adjacent property owners purchased the property and put it back on the tax roll. However, the issue of creosol with the railroad ties came to the forefront. So if we are to advance into that direction of sale, would it make sense to at least reach out to DEC and see if there's any environmental issues that we would have to deal with that may come forward if in fact the county chose to sell the land?
Yeah, we would absolutely have to do an environmental review
Okay.
on the sale, yeah.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We have had numerous discussions about a trail system. I think most people would think that it would be a great idea, could even be a world-class trail, but there's no understanding of the costs associated with trying to make something like that happen. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we could get a study done or reference an existing study or just maybe find out from some organizations who might be interested in helping us do that so that we have the full picture of what our options might be.
I actually, the discussion last time around was about a best use study. Wayne Lamoth has provided to me a study that was commissioned recently by the county with the help of a grant. I don't exactly know which grant it is. I have gone through the study. I'll be sending it out to the board this afternoon. It's a study essentially of why the tourist train has failed up until now, and recommendations on what would need to be done to make a tourist train to enhance the possibilities of success. So when it comes to evaluating the line for the purpose of tourist train, it's a really good study, a lot of good information in there. I'll send that out later today. Wayne has also done a study on his own of the costs associated with going to a trail. Right now it's in draft form. I need to get his permission to, if he's comfortable releasing it or if he needs to touch it up a little bit. We can certainly get that out to the board as well. I'll talk to Wayne about that. In terms of the freight, it'll be up to, whatever business plan an operator has coming in.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I missed the previous meeting. Is the committee all in agreement that a sale for the county is really what we want to pursue? Is that actually on the table? It seems like there was an offer by somebody, so we're going along with it, but is that in best interest? Is the county in agreement that that would be in best interest?
The consensus at the last committee meeting was to put out an RFP to see, because we don't have anything we don't have a proposal.
Yeah, I would say no, that question is not resolved, and that's why we're asking for proposals both to operate as well as to own.
Well, do we want to sell it? Does the county want to sell it?
Hold on.
That's the question. Not does somebody want to buy it, or how much, but do you want to sell it? Is it in the best interest of the county to sell it? As principle.
Do you want to, because
Sure.
I could add something to the conversation. We may still be in the railroad business regardless of whether we want to operate the railroad as Warren County or whether we want to lease with somebody, or whether we want to sell it. We may not have any choice in the matter as far as, we own that railroad and we have obligations. It is an active line. And you have an entity on the end of the line, you have an operator who's interested in purchasing a line that is connected to our line, which further obligates us if they're successful.
And I think that what the board last time around was essentially asking me to do in getting out an RFP for operating and an RFP for owning is for us to see what's out there, to compare what offers we would get for the one and what offers we would get for the other, have it all on the table, and perhaps a decision would be made that a proposal to operate is better than any of the proposals to buy. So I think that RFP process is intended to give the board better information so that they can make that decision as to whether or not they want to sell.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. I know everyone here wants what's in the best interest of the county. I think everyone wants that. I've been advocating for a multi-use trail, but I also recognize that if there were a operator who could come in, make money, clean up the tailings, that would be beneficial for the county and in the best interest of all of us. But I think that we do need a study to look at what we have and tell us what the best thing is for the county. It's okay to go out for an RFP, I'm not opposed to that, and see what people give back to us, but I don't think that we should accept any bids of any of that until we have someone else helping us figure out what is best. And I've mentioned to you guys before, Ulster County went through this, and Albany County did as well with the town of Bethlehem. They got state money to do a study and figure out what to do with the rails. And I know that we are waiting for the criteria to come out on the Smart Growth Grant, and that our superintendent here will be submitting an application. I'd like to see us get the information, hopefully get the grant and get the information from that study before we actually accept any bids. We need that study so that we're making an informed decision in the best interest of the county. The other thing is, I right now don't think a sale is in our best interest because we're going to give up control. We're going to give away what we have as a county asset. I think it's an asset. I don't think it's something wasteful sitting there that we should just get rid of in a tax foreclosure sale because we didn't pay our taxes. I don't think that.
Supervisor Loeb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Three things. I'm on record, and I just want to repeat. I have a strong interest in preserving the interests of the towns along the line. I find that's number one. Ryan, your comment about the investment in the bridges. I think if a company comes along and says, we want to buy the rail because we want to move this freight, and we want to buy it because we want to protect our investment. If there's not enough money in moving the freight, there has to be other unsaid agendas that this company has. So the money, the market, the economy is all based on that freight. If they can make enough money that allows them to invest in the quality of the track, then let's do it. If there's not enough value in that, then we need to go along the other lines of discontinuing somehow. But along Supervisor Raymer's line of argument also, any freight thing is going to be a short-term. Short-term meaning 2, 3, 5, maybe even 10 years. The process of changing it into a trail could be 10 or 20 years. I think we need to start the process at the same time.
Supervisor Hogan?
One, I want to thank the committee for taking proactive steps to get the garbage out of my community. Very much. Two, I agree that we need a study before we make the permanent decisions regarding this track. And three, I haven't heard any discussion about what the process is for selling publicly owned land. Where are the opportunities for public input going to be? What's the process? I'm new to this, so I don't know.
Well, we have to put it out. First of all, we have to have a competitive process. We would have to select the least the most financially advantageous responsible bidder. And we would, as part of the RFP, set those criteria as to what we would be looking at to determine who's a responsible bidder. And then, in terms of whether there are public hearing legal requirements, I think the county attorney may be in a better position to speak to that than I am.
Can't see you, sorry. I don't know about the public hearing. We do have to do the RFP process. It's going to be the highest responsible bidder. But it's County Law Section 215, so I can get back to you on the public hearing.
Whether or not we had to, if it was the feeling of the board that we could.
Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, County Law 215, I believe, states that you have to have two-thirds majority pass. Am I correct, Mary?
Yep.
So that's just something else.
Two-thirds majority
Of the weighted vote. So it would have to be 667 votes needed to pass that. That I don't know.
It's a two-thirds majority vote that the property is no longer needed for a public purpose. And once that is deemed no longer needed, then you can go to the RFP process. You'll have to do a resolution before.
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
Yep, you can do the resolution all at once where you deem the property no longer needed for a public purpose, and then you would select the highest.
We've already gone to RFP and we haven't.
You haven't put it out yet, right?
No. No, we haven't sent it out yet.
No, but we're doing.
We're about to.
We're putting money.
But it can be denied too.
It can be simultaneous.
Yeah.
The board could do a sale and the declaration that it has no public use simultaneously. It's just that the declaration would happen, there would be a resolution on the, making that declaration, and then a resolution approving a sale.
Supervisor McDevitt.
I don't know how you make the argument that the property does not have a public good. That seems to me that's going down a very thorny road. I mean, someone could say the obvious. I think this railbed could be used for a bike lane. I mean, it seems to me that's a public good. I mean, that's a pretty serious declaration you've made that there's no public good here. That's a pretty serious declaration.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The 2 points. Just because we put out an RFP doesn't mean we have to accept any offer that comes our way.
That's right.
The second point is and I'd like our county attorney to help out with this, but I had the good fortune of attending a conference call with our council on railroads, and there was a discussion about abandonment. And I'm curious if Mary can help confirm or correct me, but my sense is if we were to sell this line and the person is not able to create a viable business, we could then again file for abandonment, which would turn that back into, I think, public lands.
So your question was if we sold it to a private entity and then they abandoned it, we could put a clause in the deed that we get right of first refusal and it would come back to the county and then we could
do the trail.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we would.
Yeah, and that's when I spoke to their approach on reversion that we'll have in the RFP. That's what I mean. We want to gauge their openness to doing that, and that'll be part of a negotiation.
Supervisor Bramer.
I just want to clarify, Supervisor Wild. What they just said was putting it in our deed and making sure that we have that reversion clause as a private agreement between us and the person we sell to. The abandonment thing that the council was talking to us about had to do with if the line becomes abandoned by the SPP, then it reverts back to the underlying landowners, which in our case we would no longer be an underlying landowner. So pursuant to that process, we wouldn't get the line back. If we set it up though properly in any sale, which I do not agree with us doing, then we could potentially get it back.
Could get it
If
back.
they stop operating and we go get, it just seems like a whole lot of...
Congress in the mid-'80s said that if a rail line is abandoned by the if an abandonment proceeding is approved by the STB, that you can do a rail bank. You can put it in a land bank, and the reason why Congress did that is because they felt that maintaining these rail corridors and not having the property revert to the prior owners was in the national interest. So that is an option.
Yes, but if we sell, we won't be a party to that rail banking process. We'll just be a member of the public as a county body.
Unless we had a reversion in the agreement.
I get that, yes.
I think we would have to structure the agreement to say that they couldn't seek abandonment without first consulting with the county to get the property back.
Perhaps I can just offer something that would lend commentary to what has been said here today. Several years ago, Wayne and I had discussed, if you were here, we could certainly bring this up. We had talked about developing an initiative, a legacy program that would be endorsed by the county. And that legacy program would basically set a process for evaluating county assets that had some value, historic value, commercial value, whatever. So that legacy program would basically have a process. And that process may say, okay, and let's take the rail line for an example. We would look at this asset and not sure whether this should be part of our legacy program because it gives value to many things that we do here, or should we sell it? So I think to Supervisor Leggett's comments and Supervisor McDivitt's comments and to our administrator's comments, that blending of a process of looking at, sending out proposals, evaluating its worth to the county would be under that umbrella of what we call a legacy program. And we started to do that by using GIS to identify all the assets within the communities that were county owned, and taking a strong look at them on an annual basis and say, geez, do we keep them? Should we unload them? Do they have commercial value for economic development, whatever? So perhaps maybe that consideration down the road of that process of a legacy initiative may have value for you.
Roll out process.
What?
Roll out process.
Go figure.
Supervisor Wild. Thank you.
Again, there's just one more thing that I'd like to add, and talk about Supervisor Leggett's question about where we are with selling. I believe we'd have to take a short-term and long-term financial view of what this asset can do for us. There's maintenance that could be quite expensive. So I'm just looking, as I move forward as a member of this committee, for that analysis, to take a look at the financial piece of that, because we are stewards of the public trust and the public money, to make a decision encompassing both short-term and long-term goals of the county.
Okay.
Supervisor Hogan, there is no public hearing requirement.
But this board would have to deem that property of no public value before we...
Of no public use, yep.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, you were going to pull a list together of what we have on the rail lines between bridges and culverts and buildings and things that, so we can find out.
I do. I've actually provided Ryan that list. I think
thank you.
An updated list that we have.
Okay. And that will give us an idea of what our liabilities are. Because my opinion, Lise, as our chairman,
Supervisor.
I want to call you by your first name, but I can't. But lease's liability, and we have a huge liability on this line. So that I just want everybody to see what our liability is
by holding on to this, so.
Sure. Supervisor Loeb?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the full board always has the option to address any issue. With that, deciding whether it's a public, is relevant as a public value or not, would that actually start with the committee? And if the committee said yes, then it would go to the full board. If the committee said no, then the full board could say, well, we want to talk about it. Would it first start with this committee?
I would think so.
I mean, it starts at the committee level, but if the committee doesn't approve it to move on to the full board, it can always be brought from the floor at the full board.
Thank you.
Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee, by resolution of today, approving agreement with German Connection, what the Speedway record establishes the fact that the rail line serves as for public use. Second, I agree with Supervisor Bramer. I've discussed this in the past as well. The county has no plan B for this asset. We've always looked at plan A. We've struggled with it for years. Plan A has been the tourist train. And has always looked at it as being train-based. It is a resource to the county. It's 40 miles of first wilderness heritage corridor that the county controls, that we have invested a lot in, that towns along that corridor have a lot to gain from, that can provide excellent recreational resource and other amenities for the public, that the county should invest in coming up with a plan B. What if sale or lease do not come up to our terms? We have not really worked on, well, what then? We should be working on the plan B. The plan B would be, first off the base would be a recreational use trail for that corridor. I urge the committee to pursue that idea.
Thank you. Is there anything further from the committee on this topic before, because we're going to need an executive session to discuss litigation?
It would be litigation, potential contract with an entity for a service, whether or not we could, and also potential sale or lease of real property.
Supervisor Loeb?
Before we do that, you asked anything further committee about, is there anything that the committee needs to do as far as a motion to address any of the issues that we've talked about today?
I can't think of any. We're waiting for the criteria for the Smart Growth Grant to, which has been our plan to use that as a way to look at our options on the rail to catapult us into another program, hopefully with more capital to spend on looking at a long-term plan. Sure.
I just wanted to say compliments to the county administrator. I think one of the products, I think there will be a lot of different products that will be needed here. Make a good decision, and I commend you for the process that you're running. It's an open process, and everything's done to table. Well, one of the products that we absolutely have to have, one of many, is on the question of valuation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we need to have a very clear path with probably some professional assistance to develop that product, because I think it has applications maybe across the board, actually. I'm not sure anybody here today. And then, of course, there's those intrinsic values that you can't easily put a value on. But if there are other types of products, I'm not suggesting it's the only product. I think it's a very important product to have going forward. Otherwise, you can get 20 different opinions on that question, that one question.
And we don't want to overprice it. We don't want to underprice it.
Well, and what we do with it is another matter, but again, it's something we need to know.
Supervisor Bramer?
I mean, if we're going to get an outside entity to help us appraise, and we're going to spend money doing that, we should have an outside entity helping us with the study. And we might have to spend some money. I know we're going to try the Smart Growth Grant, but that may not come through. We should still be going forward with that.
Supervisor Wild.
And to add to that, it could very well be a timing issue. Right? Knowing business, it's where I come from, not government. You guys have all seen that in me. But we may want to spend some money so we have that sense before we get in a box and need to make a decision on a purchase or lease.
I know I thanked you guys, but did you actually pass a resolution appropriating money to clean up?
Didn't need to.
We're not going to.
Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, just
Chairman.
one other question that I think we sort of answer, but we don't answer, that I think absolutely needs to be nailed down, and that is the federal process, the exact federal process of how railroad land is handled when it ceases to operate as a railroad. I think that specific language, that specific and understand the desire for possibly, if we go in a certain direction, reverter type provisions, but we also need to have very clear understanding of how railroad land is handled. Because let's not forget, that also is termed the public resource, and the federal government invests heavily in its railroads, in its railroad assets. And I think there's very specific provisions, I believe, that exist in terms of how that has to be made.
I can speak to some of that. The federal government, back as part of the effort with World War II, did the eminent domain proceedings to get a hold of these railroad corridors. They, in 1962, extended that eminent domain authority for 100 years. So that eminent domain authority until 2062 will be in place. That's part of the answer.
It is part of the answer. I don't want to profess to be an expert on this, but I think we could kind of simplify it 1, 2, 3, so that we're all very clear in our minds, because I know there's a great interest in wanting to maintain the public interest, if you will, in this corridor. So we need to be very clear legally, we need to be very clear as to that provision, and what more we need to do perhaps in addition to that if we should go in a certain direction. That's my only comment.
Neil?
Well, before you go into executive session, there's a couple of things I wanted to share with you. On the point you just made, the federal government did for World War II and the Korean War, did create, but in the case of the Tawas Railroad, it wasn't eminent domain. It created a temporary easement. That's why I read the law, and that's what it is. And if the railroad ceases to be used as a railroad, it will revert back to the state of New York, and that means a lot of it back to the forest reserve, and some to private owners. The other thing that I have not heard much, I haven't heard yet, is there is currently, our Attorney General and DEC have currently filed with the Surface Transportation Board to abandon the Tawas Railroad. So when you figure the value of the railroad and then try to evaluate what freight value it's going to have, if that railroad is deemed to be abandoned, there won't be a freight option, as I understand it. So I just thought something that you ought to keep in mind.
Now, Neil, I've also followed up on that, and I think it's going to be key to look at the language when they file it. It's got to be filed by September 7th.
Right.
That is, from my understanding, an action only to get Ed Ellis and to secure that there will never be storage of cars on that line into the future.
Bravo.
But it is not to rip up the tracks.
Yeah, I didn't think it was true.
Okay. Or to cease being a railroad.
Underscore the comment this gentleman made, and I don't dispute it, it's the point that I was making, that he stated that in such matters it would refer to the state of New York.
Yeah.
As an example, but I'd like to see that in writing, and I'd like to see it, broken down.
I think Neil's attorney.
I think there may be a hierarchy in New York. Well, I also have the advantage, which I'm happy to share with Warren County. The Open Space Institute spent a lot of money researching all of these questions just before it brought it to House property. So some of the best lawyers in New York City looked at all of these questions. And I have that file, and I'd be willing to share it with with the department. Because they looked into all these questions as they were trying to evaluate the value of Thomas Railroad.
Hawes, my understanding, there are differences between the Hawes situation and how that was created as opposed to our line.
Big difference.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, anything further from the public? Okay, we need a motion to go into executive session. Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Wild.
Can I ask on what topic we're going into about the sale or acquisition of land? Is it on the railroad corridor?
Yes, but not with the intention of taking action.
Why is it not something we can't discuss in open session?
Because it was information that was provided to me on a confidential basis regarding the abandonment proceeding.
What's the stated purpose of the executive session? We didn't hear any.
Well, I said it, I had Ryan frame it up before, and then we had some questions, so I'll...
To discuss potential litigation, also potential sale or lease of real property, and I'm sure I don't have the verbiage right, but Mary, help me out.
No, you do have
I
it.
do, on whether or not an entity would be able to contract with the county.
What is a quorum here? I have to leave, and I notice there's only 5 of us. If I leave, are you going to have the votes to get out of an executive session?
Can it be me and...
When are you coming back?
So we...
I have a doctor's appointment, I have to leave.
We have a quorum.
I can leave.
You can.
I just didn't want to leave you high and dry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We'll be here till next Thursday when you come back.
No, we've got to be quick.
I'll be right back, I have to go.
So I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're in executive session.
Let's get going.
You know, Mr. Chairman, it seems like our esteemed guest has some information about the railroad that might be useful in executive session. I'm not sure exactly what our topic is.
Executive session, and if there's nothing further, Andrea? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Loeb, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. We're adjourned. Thank you.
I can't find anything on this guy.